have enough time. That's very nice for our discussion. And so before the question to the floor, I'd like to ask several questions to all you guys. And you know, it's Peter Drucker. You know, many of you know the Peter Drucker. One time mentioned that physical university, I mean physical universities which is equipped with a building and campus. Physical university will be disappeared within 30 years. So physical university will be relics, okay, compared to the virtual university. When I say virtual university, is it's a virtual aiming. That's a university. So what's your opinion? So physical university will be eventually disappear in our planet?
Well, I think that depends on what physical universities do. Right now, in a high-quality online course, we see higher learning gains than at a typical university course. And universities are changing a little bit, but I would say not quickly enough to survive. So one of the questions are about how universities adapt, but I think in practice, what we can do with combinations of experiences like OnCollege, industry internships, things like that, combined with online courses, I'd much rather, instead of have gone to college, have gone and worked with Google, for example, initially 25% time or an internship with a mentor, worked through online courses, had peer groups. None of that requires quite the expense of school. So I think it's very possible you'll see integrated experiences that take over. That would be very nice, I think.
Last week or 2 weeks ago, WeWork announced they were buying a coding school in New York, Flatiron School, to expand their offerings to be able to offer job training as well. And I think we're going to see more different kinds of experiences that serve the purpose of bringing people together in a physical place, but might not be called universities as we know them.
I like community centers, libraries, things like that as places people can get together and learn as well.
So how about Mathieu?
And well, to make it clear, it's not because we do only online teaching that we think the future is only to online teaching. In fact, I do believe in the future of education on campuses. I believe that meeting people is important, at least for the foreseeable future. So I believe, college and universities will still exist, but they are going to be modified or need to modify a lot of things to survive. Some of them will survive better than others, maybe because they have more, at least for the time being, more prestige. So in the job, it's easier to come from a Harvard degree, for instance, and it's going to still be the case in 10 years, I think. But other lesser-known universities may struggle a little bit if they do not evolve by introducing new techniques or better techniques and more efficient job placement. It's all about the cost of your education versus if you find a job and how much does it pays back. I think there's a lot better to do, but again, I'm not against it. I'm with it, and we're working with it at OpenClassrooms because we think both are important, honestly.
Okay. So, Dale, I have one question for you. And when you decide to left the school at the age of 12, I'm sure that your parents quite unhappy, right? But how is their response these days, your parents?
Oh, they're very enthusiastic.
Oh, is that so?
and yeah, I mean, I think I feel very lucky that I had the opportunity and had parents who said, hey, yes, why not try it out? And it was always it was a very opportunistic, right? It was okay, let's try this for a year. School's always going to be there. I can always go back to it. It wasn't clear that when I left that I wasn't going back at all.
But your parents could have said no. Lots of parents would have said no, and you're going to school anyway. And that would have changed a lot of your history.
Definitely.
That depends a lot on the parents and their acceptance on the will of their children, and the fact that anything that happens, it's going to be fine in the end. Lots of people think, if I miss 1 year, I'm going to be left behind, I won't have a degree, I won't have a better job, then I'm going to end up on the street. It's something like, we've seen that over and over again. So you have a chance to have great parents.
So I think one big advantage of on school is that the students have much more experience and much more exposed to the world. So that's a big advantage. But in Korea, there's a similar school system we call 대안학교, right? 대안학교 is a similar one, right? But in Korea, actually, alumni relation is very strong. So, for instance, which university you graduate is very important to survive in the society. So I wonder that you have a similar, consideration about this and alumni relation in your society compared to the students graduate from leading university in your country.
Yeah, I think there's a certain value that you can get from being a freshman at Harvard and becoming friends with someone whose parent is the CEO of a multinational company that you're not going to replace if you're not in that system. But that's a very distinct advantage that doesn't actually speak to the experience of colleges in general, but more to the prestige factor of what you can access by going to a certain institution.
So one of the things is that I think people underestimate what you can do online. In an online setting, I can peer people, so if I believe that somebody should be in your network, I can put you in contact with that person. And the sort of social experiences you can have online have evolved tremendously over the past decade. A decade ago, video conferencing kind of worked. 2 decades ago, it basically didn't work. Today, I've managed remote teams, and it's worked just fine. A decade from now, it will be that much better. We've learned a lot about how social experiences work online as well, in contexts where it's not video, where it's Facebook, Twitter, but where people prefer spending time interacting with each other digitally than in person. So I think a lot of the kind of network effects, as these initiatives come to scale, you will start to see as well.
Okay, so so this virtual university, one of the weaknesses is that the one-to-one tutoring as well as a mentoring system. So, so Mathieu, you mentioned that you provide some mentoring system. That's very, very nice to complement this virtual, universities. And you mentioned that this mentor is a voluntary basis, or you invite some mentor around the world. How they treat it in terms of payment, something like that.
Do we find them?
Yes.
Well, most of them already are on OpenClassrooms. So we say, hey, we're looking for mentors. Do you want to help others? And lots of people say yes. And, oh, is it paid? Okay, yes, double yes. But the first reason they come is they're going to help people. So they're going to have meaning. That's really important for them. Then they get paid for doing that with their job on the side. That makes double meaning. And the third reason we discovered is by mentoring someone, they learn better. And they become better at their own job. So it's a way for them to learn, and they like it like that. So we tend to let people come because we have already enough people coming who want to become a mentor. But I guess if we want to expand, it's quite easy to give some ads on Facebook and other platforms to say you're going to be paid to help others. People like having meaning.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to you guys give us some opportunity to ask other peoples. Okay, so Piotr, do you have any question to other panelists?
Well, I actually was going to just follow up on the mentoring point.
Oh, is that okay.
Which is mentoring has kind of 2 purposes. One is motivation. And a lot of platforms in the K-12 space do the motivation component very well with gamification. My son would rather play Splash Math and similar math games than most anything else. The second component is remediation of misconceptions if a person has an error in their thinking. You can do that very well in at-scale settings by virtue of number of students. So we've sort of had 2 mechanisms. One is that I build a simple technology where if students make a mistake, they could then, and then they correct their mistake, they could provide feedback for future students who made the same mistake. And so we could build up a body of remediations for misconceptions that way. A second one is Q&A forums, which early MOOCs had kind of Stack Overflow style forums. And what we found, none of the MOOC providers right now do this, kind of the major ones, but in the early days this was very common. What we found in that context was that we got a very beautiful body of kind of tutorial-style explanations for most errors that students might make that were a much higher level of quality than what you would expect from a college, because you had a tremendous number of eyeballs on a small number of questions. Students would find questions that they were asking rather than asking new ones. So you sort of had 300 times as many students reading questions and answers to them as providing answers. And so the quality of remediations there was very high. So you can capture out of this individual environments if you're careful.
Okay. So you have any question to other panelists?
Question to other panelists?
Yes.
Well,
you don't have to if you don't.
No, I just haven't thought about it. Question for other panelists. No, I guess I'll let the other ask questions if they have.
Okay. How about Dave? You have a question to other panelists?
I'm curious how the French regulatory environment has changed over the time that you've been working in.
The regulatory environment? A lot, actually. As for us, we're still struggling with regulatory restrictions because sometimes it's written that you have to make some number of hours in a classroom for the students to get some sort of benefits. So, for instance, they ask us, how many hours of courses do you have on OpenClassrooms? How can we answer that?
Right.
You don't have hours of classrooms. You can, of course, count the time the person is sitting on a chair connected to the website, but you all know that's not going to happen, right? You won't just log every information and suppose that because the person has just loaded a page, he or she is learning on the website. Maybe he's looking elsewhere, maybe he's spending more time on the page. There's no way to do that. It depends on the person. Some person need to spend more time to have courses, others don't. So that's a regulatory problem we have because it's still, at least in France, based on number of hours. But at least we have a chance, is that regulation in France authorizes us to give state-endorsed degrees as long as we prove that students get a job in the end and that we match the skills needed by the employers. That's a very good advantage. I didn't know that France was quite advanced in that matter, but we are, if it proves. And that has helped us a lot in doing what we do. And it shows to other people, especially in Europe and then around the world, that it's something that might be doable. Going away from the grades, traditional grades, just working on skills, proving that you have a degree and that it leads you to a job should be enough to have state recognition. It's not only about prestige or because you've been there for 100 years, you're supposed to have the test and those degrees. So things are changing. Not as fast as a startup like ours would like to, but at least positively in the right direction and much faster in the last 3 to 4 years than before, for sure.
Have you looked at self-reported hours?
We did not ask for self-reported hours. We might do that because it could be interesting from pedagogical perspective, but certainly not for funding or regulatory matters. I don't think that's something we should do at all.
I see. We found that to be surprisingly accurate. But I'm curious, why would it not help with regulatory?
What's the issue?
Why would it not help with regulatory if students self-report hours?
Because regulation thinks that everyone gets the same courses at the same time for the same duration. We don't. They get a very different experience. They get a very personalized experience on our platform. So if someone goes twice as fast as others, they're going to ask us why. They're going to have issues and maybe pay less for the program for these people or do not recognize their degree. We have an issue with that. They positively listening to what we say, but a lot of bodies, at least in France, are funding the programs for job seekers, for instance, who do not have money, and they need to prove they have done 700 or I don't know, 1,000 hours of courses, and we just say that on a global scale, say, okay, it's 1,000 hours of courses, but we don't explain how, because we can't. It's just not possible to prove a person has done 1,000 hours, and if someone does 400 hours, then they're not going to be paid for the program.
Interesting.
Okay, that's good enough. Don't fight. Okay, so now I'd like to shift to Q&A from the floor. I have a question, 37 questions. Maybe we cannot digest all the questions, so I try to fast as soon as possible. First question to Piotr. EdX is considered to be quite successful opening new era of education. Why do you feel EdX is ineffective and regressed compared to the prototype platform you created half-decade ago?
Oh, well, so that's a comparative measure. So what it has been effective as, it has about 10 million learners, a bit more at this point, over 1,000 courses. It's providing access to knowledge that was not there before. But the first course that we had, students would design analog circuits in a simulator. They would do analysis and design problems where the answers were equations or numbers, not necessarily even a single numerical answer. They were, but, for example, design, pick two component values here that satisfy the following constraint, and then it would verify that that was correct. That was our first course. Very sophisticated assessments, very short videos that led people through understanding things where people would do a lot of derivation for themselves. Our second set of courses were almost as good. We had programming courses where students would write a lot of code. It would be, again, verified by simulation. And chemistry courses visualize crystallography planes, chemical equations, things like that. It was authentic assessment. That's very powerful. That leads to large learning gains. As the platform organization evolved, it's not to say that the courses are ineffective in an absolute sense, but they've moved far behind the state of the art. So right now, about a third of edX courses have kind of half-hour or hour fairly lengthy lecture videos. We know those don't work very well. That's no worse than an in-person lecture, but it's not very good. 80% of courses have multiple choice questions. That's a lot worse than authentic assessments. And that's all based on market pressures for how to make more courses, which in turn translates how to make courses that are less expensive. So there has been a lot of slippage from the quality we had at the beginning, where the focus was really, how do we improve learning on campus? How do we improve learning online? We had a constraint that what we had to deliver was better than what was being done on the MIT campus. And that was a very powerful constraint to start from. So,
okay, so I think the multiple choice question is very important, especially in Korea. We are always to select one right answers. That's not the world. In the real world, there are many, many answers, right? So, okay, 다음에는 이게 한국말로 돼 있네요. 그래서 이 동시 통역을 이제 영어로 해주셔야 될 것 같은데. To all, 안녕하세요. 과천고등학교 1학년입니다. 기존의 학교에서 저희가 배우는 것은 단순히 학업적인 것뿐만 아니라 집단 생활 혹은 사람들과 지내는 법도 자연스럽게 배우게 된다고 생각합니다. 학교는 하나의 작은 사회 같은 곳이니까요. 그렇다면 온라인 교육에서는 이 부분을 어떠한 방법으로 익힐 수 있을지 여쭤보고 싶습니다. It's a question to all the panelists.
Okay, should we
You got it? You got the question?
I just realized I had to put this in.
In English. Sorry.
So,
you know the way how you escape the question. Okay, you go ahead.
Online education is, first of all, I love the question. Second of all, online education is a great place to do this. So one of the core problems in in-person education is that we actually develop soft skills very poorly. At universities, we put students in projects and hope that they learn soft skills. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that we can bring in. In industry, we have 360 reviews where peers review other people, and we can use this in education. It's very rare in classrooms, but it has a big impact. You do a small group project. At that point, you submit reviews for your peers. You figure out how they did on different axes, and you provide that feedback to students. You can do things like see how much time individuals and groups spend interacting. The most effective groups have about equal contributions from all of the members. This is actually pretty well established science as well. A project at the Media Lab put a tool which lets people visualize if one of the group members is dominating the conversation. Online social has progressed a tremendous amount where even in a pure online setting, if we have video conference, that works pretty well now. It will work better, but all of that can be integrated with feedback. We can have feedback on email communication as well. an instructor can only provide feedback when they're sitting there monitoring what we're talking about. Technology, computers are good at big data. They can look at every email I wrote, every email he wrote, every email that he wrote, every online communication, and provide us with in-depth feedback and instructors with visualizations on that. So I think we're still developing this, but I think we're going to see a fairly large transformation. That is one of the places where I think technology will have a pretty big transformational impact.
Thank you so much. Mathieu, you have some comment on this question?
Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
About the question?
Soft skills group work, technology.
How do we work on soft skills, for instance? That's a good question, effectively. We tend to work on soft skills at the end of the path, actually, on OpenClassrooms. And we let that happen throughout the path, because lots of stuff happens throughout the path. But I believe we could do something more integrated specifically because we want to. We've seen that working on the skills, for instance, to help you find a job or having the right presentation when you go to see an employer makes a huge difference. What we do is we have a specific pass, about 2 months pass. We give to students who need it the most for free after their degree. So if we see they struggle finding a job and maybe we are going to have to reimburse them, we give them a specific mentor helping them to prepare for modifying their resume and going to a job meeting. And it works really, really well. But that's mainly because of, again, online courses we have made for that. And thanks to mentoring, having a right mentor makes a huge difference. Thanks to the online tools that we have, we can put together the right mentor and the right mentee, the right students, more easily and more cost effectively. That's why it makes sense to do it online. But that's something we could already have done on-site campus, offline. And we haven't done, or we should have done that, in my opinion.
Okay. Dale, you know the question?
Soft skills are really the core of what UnCollege does. But UnCollege has not to date invested in building its own technology product. We've invested more in the pedagogy of actually designing an experience that works for the student. I know it's something that they're working on, and building a hybrid model for the gap year program is in the works. But I think that's a fall 2018 kind of timeline thing.
I think it's a big challenge for the human society when we are entering the hyper-connected society. So all humans are not so hyper-connected around the world at the speed of light. But most of people actually disconnected of society. Okay, so many people feel lonely these days. If we're talking about a young generation, they feel lonely even though they are connected around the world. So that's a big challenge to the educator in the future. So, okay, so next question is to Piotr. 교수님 변화에는 강사의 요구와 더불어 학생의 요구, 수준도 고려해야 합니다. 강의에서처럼 학생들의 수준이 천차만별인 수업들도 있는데 대다수 학생들의 니즈를 충족시키려면 어떤 대안이 필요할까요? You got the questions?
So the question is about differentiated learning. Sorry, it took a little while for the translation to catch up.
Differentiation in the student level. So how you accommodate difference in the student level.
So there's a number of ways you can do this. The way that I learned how to communicate, written communication, was in my high school newspaper. It was a group of students, different age students from 9th grade through 12th grade, and we came in and we wrote articles. Seniors would proofread the articles of the freshmen, junior and seniors of the freshmen and sophomores. As we wrote more articles, we would start to proofread others' articles, provide feedback. There was a cycle like this. It accommodated students at all different levels, and I learned far more from that experience than from any English class I ever took. We have many forms of small group interactions. When I was at MIT, we had a solar car team. We had actually a better example was a robotics team. We had an electronic engineer, 2 computer scientists, and a mechanical engineer working together on that, learning from each other. As you start to move towards group experiences, you become much better at differentiated learning. There are also ways you can do this in technology-enabled settings. The Khan Academy experiment that I mentioned had students working through Khan Academy content at their own pace, and teachers supporting students when they got stuck. Teachers thought this would be horrible, students taught by technology. In practice, there was a lot more one-on-one interaction, and both the students and teachers liked that a lot better than lecture formats. But students moving through online intelligent tutoring systems in fields like math and physics works very well. It's very discipline-specific, but it works a heck of a lot better than lecture, I think, in basically all respects. It's a lot more humane. It's a lot, students learn a lot faster and a lot better in those settings.
Okay, now the question to Mathieu. How can open classrooms have weekly online mentoring sessions for 3 million of students? How many mentors do you have, and how long is the session?
Okay, we do not have 3 million students having mentoring. There are different offerings on OpenClassrooms. The 3 million are the number of people who come to learn at least one course in a month. But sometimes they just go on a course, read the text and see the videos and go back. They just getting small amount of information that they need. And these people are perfectly happy with that, and they don't want more. Other people discover that they want more. They like it, and they maybe want to change careers, find a complete new job. Then they will need a mentor. And that's in the thousands.
Let me ask what is the percentage of a mentor who take the mentorship again?
The percentage who take a mentorship on OpenClassrooms, it's about a few percent, 2-3%. It's a very small amount of the.
My question is that some people take a mentor, then after mentors, what is the percentage he take the mentor again?
Who become a mentor after becoming a student?
No. I mean,
sorry.
Okay, go. Okay, next question is Dale Stevenson. Question for you. 학교를 중퇴한 이유와 학교를 중퇴한 이유와 현재 미국 학생들이 중퇴에 대한 생각이 어떤지, 그리고 학교 생활에 힘들어하는 학교 학생들에게 조언 부탁합니다. Question is clear to you?
That's a multi-part question.
Number one is why you quit the school.
Yeah, my initial motivation for dropping out was that I didn't feel like I was being served learning in that environment. I grew up in a very small farm town. It was not a place where academics were valued or respected, and so I knew that I would have to take things in my own hands if I wanted to challenge myself academically. I think it really depends on where you are as to the question of what the general public's view of dropouts is. If you're in San Francisco or New York, it's easy to never notice it at all, and if, in fact it's heralded, if anything. The U.S. has had this pattern matching of people dropping out of Harvard and starting big companies, and there's definitely somewhat of a cultural phenomenon around that. But it's never, I think it's, if I had grown up in Nebraska, I would have a very different answer to this question. The U.S. is very stratified socioeconomically between blue states and red states, which very much directly correlates with economic output.
Okay.
Could I add one more thing to that?
Yeah, please.
So there is a strong economic benefit to having a unique skill set. And almost anything you can do that gives you a different educational experience than the mainstream lets you fill niches in the job market that other people can't fill. So it tends to actually be very beneficial. I think if everybody started dropping out, it might change, but for now I think there's a strong economic advantage to that diversity.
Okay. So now question is to Mathieu. 차세대 영재 기업인의 대전 문정중학교 2학년 재학 중인 학생입니다. 멘토링 시스템에서 멘토의 역할이 그저 지식 제공이 아닌 적절한 교육을 받을 수 있도록 이끌고 격려해 주는 것이라고 생각합니다. 학생의 요구를 들어주고 조언해 주는 것만 아니라 수료 뒤에도 서로의 관계를 발전시켜 줄 수 있는 시스템이라고 생각을 합니다. 멘토링 시스템을 발전시켜 새롭게 창출할 이익이 많을 것 같은데 어떤 방향으로 발전시킬 것인지가 궁금합니다.
Okay, so first of all, let me tell you that whoever you are, I completely agree with you. That's how we see that. We see that it's a way of learning, that the mentor is not here to give you knowledge, absolutely not at all, actually, on OpenClassrooms, but to guide you where you need to be guided. This is how we achieve personalized education. This is really important. So as for the future of mentoring, well, for us, the challenge now is scaling up because we're getting more and more students who want to mentor, and we need to train them well. So it's about maybe certification, accreditation of the mentors. We need to do that on a more global level, but that's happening. We have mentors now in French, English, and Spanish all over the world. We have students in 120 countries. So the model seems to be working very well. 1 hour a week is enough for most of the people. Some people might need a little bit more, so we're listening to how many they are and what we can do for them. So there might be some need of personalization for that, but other than that, I think the model is pretty robust right now, and the future, at least for OpenClassrooms, is not mentoring, but what we call now, it's just an experiment right now, it's called tutoring from a student, an advanced student. So, you know, the mentor time is precious. Mentor is paid, mentor has a job on the side, so he can do everything. But the student tutoring is someone who is advanced in the past, at least at the end of the past, trying to help also the student at the beginning, on top, on plus, with the mentor. We just started to experiment that a month ago, and it's giving very strong results in terms of feedback. I just have qualitative data, not quantitative data. It shows that the student is getting a lot of benefits from teaching or guiding the other student because he's closer. He knows the issues that he had. So this is something we expected. But something more we see is that the student is, by looking at the project of other people, is discovering that it could have been done differently, even for him. And that's a way of learning very strong for the students. And that's my belief. The future is not only mentoring, it's online courses, mentoring and tutoring from students. Combining that effectively makes a very strong product.
Okay, that's a beautiful answer. Okay, any other question? Okay, 또 다른 question 있네요. 여러분 모두가 엔지니어 베이스를 가졌기 때문에 이 디플로마 없이도 학위 없이도 잘하고 계신 것이 아닌가요?
That is not true of me.
Yeah, you don't have any major, right? You quit the school before taking a major. Okay, not for you. How about Piotr?
Well, I kind of was confused by the translation of the question. The translation said, we
because
don't have a degree. I think he doesn't have a degree, but I think the rest of us...
You have a degree in the electrical and EE, right? EE.
Sure.
The question is that because of engineering background, you can survive with this kind of educational system.
Well, so fundamentally, there aren't that many things that one needs to learn to be successful. One needs mathematical maturity, and you can get that in a science background, engineering background, whatever else. Once you have that, you can switch through a variety of fields if you know linear algebra, probability, differential equations, that sort of thing. There is sort of how the human brain functions, and that's common between management, education, leadership, quite a few other fields. And so I sort of made a career of going field by field, but each time my thesis advisor did the same thing, Jerry Sussman and Tom Knight, both of them worked in many different fields. As you switch fields, it becomes easier and easier. So jumping into a new field is perhaps not so hard if you have background in kind of a few fundamental areas like that.
Okay.
And that's really the goal of the education system, is to develop those kind of fundamental skills.
How about Mathieu?
I'm a bit surprised by the question because I have a degree in engineering, so yeah, I know how to code, I know how to build a product, but I could have learned if I didn't, and I know a lot of people who did. It gives an advantage in the sense that when you come from an engineering degree, you know better how the technical stuff works, so you might design it better, but I think that's not enough. You need to know how to design a great product, and it's about deciding what you're going to code, what you're not going to code. Actually, my job at OpenClassrooms has almost always been, and it still is as of today, discovering the needs of the students. Trying everything I can without coding, just with my bare hands. When I started the mentoring, I became the first mentor. I did mentoring with Skype. I just installed Skype and talked to people and managed the agenda with Google Agenda. I did not develop a product to make that happen. I just tried before myself. And then I got a second student, a third student. Then when I became overwhelmed by all the students that I got, I started hiring new mentors. And when I became overwhelmed by hiring new mentors, I started hiring the people who hired the mentors. But because I did that manually before, I could process information, understand better how it worked, and then tell the technical team of OpenClassrooms, who is doing an amazing work, by the way, how it should be done. Because I was already on version 2 or version 3 of the product in my head. I knew what was going to work and what wasn't. So I gave away, or they did not have to spend a lot of time doing something that was not worth it. I think that's important skill to have. It's not technical, it's understanding how to build a technical product, which is very different.
아까 그 질문이 중간에 끊겨서 저한테 올라왔기 때문에 뒤에 조금 더 부과되는 게 있는데 그거에 대해서도 좀 질문을 좀 하겠습니다. 그래서 하여튼 그 엔지니어링 백그라운드 있기 때문에 그렇게 온라인 교육상에서 이렇게 적응하기가 쉬운 거라고 생각을 하는데 이런 지식의 척도를 잴 수 없는 이 철학이나 예술 분야에서의 온라인 플랫폼 교육에 대해서 이 생각을 좀 듣고 싶다고 그러네요. Okay.
So right now, I didn't get into this in my presentation, but I'm at exactly that stage of building a platform to help students develop soft skills. The initial target market for that looks to be legal education in the US. That is all still liable to change. But the first thing that I did there, or one of the first things that I did, I was at a conference on legal education recently. I did a presentation that was completely technology-based. It was a PowerPoint deck where essentially all I did was hit the next button every 5 minutes. The first slide said, form into groups of 3 participants. Those was mostly professors and technologists, and introduce yourself. The next slide said, come up with a way, working alone, come up with a list of skills that lawyers need but that law schools don't develop. The next slide for 5 minutes was share your topic with your group and pick the number 1. The next slide was now come up with a technology, assuming Google is your engineering team, the Supreme Court can personally mentor your students, a technology and a pedagogy to help students develop that skill. The next one was now cut that back to reasonable resources. And there was a series of activities like that on slides for groups, which they did in peer groups. The whole audience was completely engaged. It wasn't the sort of thing that you have in a talk-style format. Everybody was happy, actively engaged, could see it on their faces, and more than half the participants thanked me later. The goal of this was to show that technologies can develop, very simple technologies. This was just a PowerPoint deck, and a timer was all you would need to do this. Online, you would connect them on video conference. In person, you could do this in a setting. That's all you need to have a very compelling experience around group work and a fairly soft skill. We're sort of starting to develop things like this in law classrooms where people go learn cases by practicing arguing them. All of this you can do in online settings. There's not this kind of very narrow thing that technology can support. It can support a very rich and broad range of pedagogical practices. MOOCs started engineering because we have engineering backgrounds and that's what we're best skilled in teaching, but there's no mismatch to teaching other disciplines. And with the younger generation growing up on cell phones, people are actually very comfortable learning in those settings.
Mathieu,
I would
you
like
have
to
some
agree.
comments?
I would like to agree a lot. People seems to think that because we online platforms usually teach mostly engineering skills, then it works only for engineering skills, right? But that's not the case. We teach engineering skills at first because there's job for that, so it's easier for us to have job guarantee, to find a job, but also because engineers are the first ones to come to online platforms. They're more comfortable than others at first for that. But we've seen that over and over time. Other people then come to online platforms and learn that it's possible to learn that way, but it just takes more time. So it's normal for me to have coding courses online at first, and then you have humanities come online, but just later, because it takes time for the world people to understand how it works. I think it works. We are trying to prove that by doing HR, for instance. We have HR degrees just started. It's very different. You need different type of skills, not only technical coding skills. And yeah, the mentoring proves to be working at the same rate, at the same pace. So I don't see any issue with that. It's just slower to happen because of cultural differences.
Dale, you have a comment on this question?
Only to say that there are a number of other platforms that have developed specifically around creative education. Creative Live is one, Masterclass is another, and I think it's I would be remiss not to mention something like YouTube, which has become an amazing platform for learning how to do makeup, right? Like there's all sorts of educational content out there that's not engineering focused.
Okay, thank you so much. We are running out of time, but I have a few more questions. So may I ask a favor of you? And if we send our audience to you through the email, will you willing to respond? Okay, great.
Of course.
So
yeah, really, do not hesitate to send emails. I answer everyone.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'd like to close these sessions by giving a big hand to the excellent panelists, and also today they present a very revolutionary and innovative ideas. And also I'm thankful to the audiences to deliver the very interesting questions. So let me close this session with a big hand to all the panelists.